Hello and namaste. Before I begin, I'd like to make some thank yous to everyone in this room for making this possible. Thank you to Stormji, thank you to Catherine G, Yogesh, Prahlad, and all the students. And also to Madeline and Sophie for setting the bar so high. It's very nerve-wracking. But my ISP presentation is called Tantrism. And Robin, would you mind? It's called Tantrism, an exploration of the divine imagery at Khajuraho. And my objective for this presentation is to explain the ideas and philosophies behind Tantrism. I'm going to discuss some of the rituals that it involves. I'm going to briefly talk about my tantric experience studying under a guru. And then I'm going to talk about Khajuraho and how the ideas of Tantrism are manifested into the temples and how the abstract, these intangible things, can be put into the shapes of material forms. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what is Tantrism? It's known as a lot of different things, but basically it can be understood as a system of meditative acts and physical rituals that a devotee practices to see the universe inside of his own body. And what's different about Tantrism than any other Indian religion is that it opposes other orthodox and Brahmanical ways of thinking that were saying that the physical world is gross and valueless. But actually, Tantrism says that we should engage our senses into the world and cultivate our emotions, that the physical world could be beneficial to experience a heightened reality, to experience a heightened consciousness. So instead of saying repress your desires, it says desires can be fulfilled, material, physical, sexual urges, as long as they are acts of worship. So as long as, so you can have sex or you can eat meat, as long as it's transformed into an act of worship, an act of God. So think of Tantrism as cultivating a feeling of delight, cultivating a feeling of ecstasy through a vision of cosmic sexuality. Now, Tantrism believes that our universe is composed of two intimate forces, two intimate energies, Shakti and Shiva, male and female. And Shiva is this auspicious energy. Think of him as black matter, dark matter. He has no shape, he has no form, he's beyond time, he's beyond causality, kind of what we think of dark matter is today. And it's just this emanating force out in the universe. And Shakti is elemental matter. She's energy inside of things, inside of real things that we can interact with and engage with. And the fusion of these two things, the union of Shakti and Shiva, is what Tantrism aims at. So the practitioner tries to recognize the union of these two energies inside of his own body. And then he goes from a mundane consciousness of everyday life into a supreme being. Moksha. That's how he attains liberation. So Tantrism is a means of studying one's own personality. It's exploring the limitations of your perceptions or why you see things the way you do. How it's a combination of your past, of what your parents taught you, of what you read, and why this is limiting your experience of the world. So the Tantric ego is how your personality is a limited set of attributes. And what Tantrism aims to do is to replace this limited ego with an unlimited ego. So to become unlimited, you have to recognize the presence of the universe inside of yourself. Because think of the universe. Well, we know that our universe isn't unlimited. First we thought there was only our universe. And then we realized that there was 11 million galaxies inside of our universe. And then we realized that there was 10 trillion other universes outside. That is this expanding. It's going up and it's growing even larger than we even thought. So the universe is always changing. And sometimes different Milky Ways are closer to our universe. And sometimes they're getting farther away. So it is an ever-changing organism. And since we come from that, that is the product of us. It's inside of us. We are always changing, and we have a lot of biological things inside of our body that help us think that the world is a stable place when it's anything but stable. So essential to recognizing this are tantric sadhanas, which is an act of ritual, sadhana. So next slide. And tantric rituals are different than other rituals because they had to be secret. They had to be disclosed from the public, and that's because they were doing so many strange things. They were drinking out of skulls. They were eating corpses. They were having sex in front of hundreds of people in temples. So when other Orthodox religions found out about these practices, they burnt the text. They thought it was absurd, grotesque. They tore down the temples. So instead of passing the text down literary. With scribes, they passed them down orally. So not many of the stuff exists, except some of the stuff was buried in caskets deep underground, and we've actually found some of the tantric texts. So essential to tantric rituals are mantra and yantra. So Tantrism is a way of acting. It's not a mere belief. So in order to experience the magic, the enlightenment of Tantrism, you actually have to perform these things. So one must strictly chant mantras with yantras. And so now we're going to talk about what a mantra is, what exactly this crazy syllable of sound is. So Tantrism views the world that every single object, from every thought in your brain, from every idea in your head, to every intangible thing that you know exists, to every physical thing, from this notebook, from this to this carpet, to this room we're in, is just different particles of sound. And if you think about quantum physics, quantum physicists, what do they say? They say, at first they thought it was just little subatomic particles, then they thought it was atoms, and then they looked deep inside of it and they saw little strings vibrating. String theory, that's what string theory is, that there are little sounds inside of atoms, and that's where the universe comes from. So Tantrism had this idea 2,000 years ago. So in the beginning, there was just Shiva. There was just Shiva. There was just dark matter. There was nothing in the universe. And Shiva had a desire to create the universe. So his desire was this little emanating force, was this little vibration. And from the vibration that he had came sound, and from sound came space, and from space came objects, and from objects came form, and from that an explosion happened and the universe existed. So they truly believe that sound is the bindu, the center from where all emanated from. So a mantra is a sacred, it's an organized sound. It's a hymn to God. It's chanting to God. So it's a form of sound that energizes the body and the mind. The power of a mantra is its ability to change you physically, and then that'll change your state of consciousness. So the meaning of the mantra is not expressed in the syntax. You're not going to read a translation of a Sanskrit mantra and begin to understand what it is. It's revealed to the practitioner as he continues to chant it. Japa is repetition in Tantrism. So as you continue to chant the mantra, the meaning of it starts to reveal itself to you, and then it starts to change, and then you can feel the magic of the mantra. And different versions of mantra energize different parts of the body. It's really amazing, because it's true. Different vibrations work on different organs. So while chanting a mantra, you use a yantra to also help you. Now a yantra is a diagram, and I have here a picture of the yantra I used when I was studying under a guru. And the diagram is to guide the devotee, to keep him centered. And it is showing how existence emanated from one point. You see him in the lotus flower, there's a tiny center. It's kind of messy since we had a coconut pot on top of it. But from the center is where everything comes out, is from where everything comes out of. And we see the diagonal lines and the blue lines representing the wind, which gave friction to life, and that's how everything emanated from. And it's showing the workings of the universe and the workings of the human mind. And that's what, when Carl Jung, the great philosopher, the great psychologist, studied mandalas and yantra diagrams, he realized that this is what it represents. It represents the human mind, and it's guiding you on realizing where you come from, or where Tantrism believes you came from. And the idea of using a yantra that represents the whole idea of the universe, how things came from one point, and just puts it in a little diagram, is that by images arise faith, and from faith comes devotion, and from devotion comes knowledge, and from knowledge comes liberation. So by putting it in a tangible form, it makes it easier for you to understand. If that makes any sense at all. So next thing. So if one wants to study yantra or mantra, and one wants to take on tantra, you can't just, wake up one morning, I'm going to become the next tantric practitioner. You have to study under someone. You need to study under a guru. The guru decides which mantra is best for you, which yantra is best for you. And a guru in Hindu society is looked at as a god. It's someone who knows two things. This is what my guru told me: truth and untruth. And he brings light to darkness, because darkness is only the absence of light. So he's the one who brings the wisdom. He plants the seed of knowledge in you, and then you start to study, and you can understand. He sees you better than you see yourself, basically. So other forms of tantric ritual is something called the Panchamakara, or the 5 M's. And this is the ritual that most likely gives Tantra its notorious reputation. And the 5 M's are 5 Ma sounds, and they're the 5 nectars of desire. So what we have here is Madhya, which is liquor, Mamsa, which is meat, Matsya, which is fish, Mudra, which is a gesture, but it's referred to as a coin, and Matana, which is sex. And the purpose of indulging in these rituals is to overwhelm the dullness of the mind with stimulation. So that's one way of taking you from mundane consciousness to a heightened level of consciousness. And the whole idea of 5 goes with, like, the world is made of 5 elements, and you can actually say liquor is fire, meat is earth, fish is water, money is sky, sex is ether. So there's different ways to interpret this, but there's 2 paths of following through with this. So you could actually indulge them and have sex and eat meat and be barbaric, but perform it as a ritual. Or you could do it the divine way, which is to engage in the meat of silence, the fish of breath, the money of concentration, the wine of God, and the sex of making union with your ego in the absolute. And the whole idea of all these rituals, of all these practices, Shakti and Shiva, is to awaken the Kundalini, or the Shakti energy that lives inside of your body. Next slide, please. Okay, so Tantrism views that underneath this human body there's a subtle yogic body. And there are 7 different centers of this body that you could rise and lift energy out of, and there are different centers of energy. And by practicing rituals, you awaken energy, and Tantrism is the process of moving demonic energy, which works down, and lifting it up higher. So the Kundalini energy, which is stored down in your lowest, the genital chakra, you lift it up to the navel, up to the heart, up to the throat, up to between the brows, and then send it through the cranium. And once it goes through the cranium, it can make union with the Shiva, with the auspicious space, and that's how a tantric devotee can attain moksha. Okay, next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk, I've just given you a brief history, background on the tantric rituals. I'm going to say how this stuff is.